Now, I haven't been the best at getting this done, but you know what? That's okay. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm going to get better, and as I do, you will see more of these videos at the right time when they are intended to be seen. For now, this is going to be the video that I talk about the heart in. So last time we spoke, on this whole witness consciousness planned video thing, was, we're talking about what is our consciousness actually witnessing. And one of the things that it was witnessing is the mind. And we kind of went over that the other day. Now we're going to discuss the heart, which is a bit more ephemeral than the mind. So the mind we defined it kind of as a energy field where thoughts are created. The heart is an energy field where emotions are created. And the thing about those is they're a lot more, the vibrations are different, right? It's the thoughts are more concrete than emotions, because emotions are like, you know what an emotion is. Everybody knows what an emotion is because we all feel them. So my notes are back here, so please excuse that. So while we're witnessing our emotions, we want to be objective in our observations, correct? And we don't want to label things as good or bad. And if we do, we don't want to label that as good or bad. And if we do, we don't want to label that as good as bad, good or bad. Just keep going until it stops being good or bad. It's a practice of having grace with yourself, right? The thing about emotions is that they are like thoughts meant to be passing experiences. It's difficult though, because the reasons we do or do not want to have a particular thought is because of the emotion that it brings up in us, right? So it's really all about, do I want the emotion, or do I not want this emotion? And most of us are like, oh, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, I don't want this emotion. Well, one of the things I thought was really interesting that Michael Singer talks about is that the heart. So, okay, we'll go to, he uses the example of going to a play like Romeo and Juliet, and you go and it's an amazing play, and you cry and you weep deeply, and it's this thing that this release of emotion, this relief like you haven't felt in such a long time, and you go and you bring all your friends, you're like, we have to go see this, and you go and you're like, and you're all crying and stuff like that. But we don't like to have that in our actual lives, which is interesting when you think about it. We want to feel the emotions, but we don't want them to be ours. You know what I mean? We don't want those to be, well, we want them to be ours. What's kind of the idea there? We don't want the things that happen to create those emotions to happen to us, right? Because we those are bad in our minds. But the thing about that is that another thing that Michael Singer kind of talks about quite a bit is the idea that emotions are like the soundtrack to our lives, right? So there's these huge swells that can play up here, they can play down here, and everything in between. And it, quite like a film, if you didn't have a soundtrack, it would be flat, right? It would be a bit more flat. I mean, it depends on the actors, and I could make anything work, but the emotions, I mean, like, imagine Darth Vader walking through, the Death Star, and you're not hearing dun 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 dun. That's totally the wrong. It's an awful like the funeral march, but now in my head it's the funeral march, but dun 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 dun. That one, like, I'm not good at songs and music and notes, but you know what I'm talking about. The theme song where Darth Vader is like walking, like, and you're like, oh, but if it was just like a man in a black cape walking, you'd be like, right? But the emotions in life, rather than having things be kind of flat, make things more spicy, I guess. I don't know. More enjoyable in that sense. And it's too bad that we can't enjoy them the way we enjoy the emotions that we feel when it comes to movies or films or plays, or movies and films are the same thing, plays or TV shows or anything else that doesn't actually involve something bad happening to us. Bad. So anyway, point being, what am I saying here is that there are times we don't want to feel the emotions that we are feeling, but what's the point of living life if you're only going to feel the higher emotions? I mean, like, no, we don't want to sit with the bad emotions. See, I'm labeling them. But you know what? We're learning together. We are learning together. We're on this journey together. But, you know, the emotions that we're having, be they high vibration or low vibration, they can all be enjoyed in a sense. The thing about it, though, is that a lot of times if we decide that this is too uncomfortable and we don't want to feel it, we try and suppress it. And basically we create an emotional blockage, which is also called a samskara. And my body has been filled with them. And I've been talking about that for about almost 2 years now. But that's a different story. The thing about that is, in order to avoid creating samskaras, which is to be avoided, because what happens when you have a samskara is that, so it's, there's so much, there's just so much. One of the things that Michael Singer talks about is butterflies and rattlesnakes, right? Like you like the butterfly and you want the butterfly to stay. So if the butterfly does, you like the butterfly, you go there again, it doesn't come, you're upset. You see the rattlesnake, and that's really scary and that's upsetting, right? So either way, whether it's good or bad, it creates an impression and you suffer for it. So you don't want to hold on to the butterfly. You don't want to hold on to the rattlesnake. In order to do that, though, you have to notice when those things come in, so that you can remain open while they pass through you, which is hard. But one of the interesting things, too, though, is that Singer kind of talks about is with the rattlesnake as an example. You know, at a certain point, it becomes more generalized. So you see a rope on the ground and you think it's a rattlesnake, and you're like, all of a sudden, so this stimulus comes in and it has nothing to do with the rattlesnake, but it vaguely reminds you of what the rattlesnake was, and so it hits that samskara that you created because you didn't want to feel the uncomfortable feeling that the rattlesnake gave you. You kind of just held that wherever that is that you kind of tensed up. Like, it's all over the place. It's all over the place. The places that you tense, guys. You don't even realize it. And so the stimuli comes in and actually kind of hits it and bounces off, and the thing's like, whoa! But we still don't let it go. We hold on to it. So the only place you can let those things go, guess where it is, guys? Anybody? The moment. You have to be in the moment to let these things go. And next month, I'm actually getting very excited about this idea. Is going to be the month of letting go, because it was the first thing that got me into, like, it was the first time I was like, wait, okay, this, when I was listening to Michael Singer one of the first times, I was like, this is helping me. This will help me. This man can help me. These teachings can help me. So letting go is it's an exciting thing for me to talk about. And I'm kind of really already like, ooh, what can I do? Anyway, point being, you can't allow things to pass through you unless you're there allowing them to pass through you, because honestly, we're so unconscious that we just kind of automatically, if it's uncomfortable, we're like, I'll speak for myself. And sorry that I'm kind of going all over with the cleave there, but I know that I have an automatic program that defines any uncomfortable emotion as like, I don't want to have this. push it away, I don't want it. And that's something I'm very much working on. But again, I have to be present, not only for the samskara, so something comes in, and for me to not form a samskara, for me to not create an emotional blockage, which stops the energy from flowing, which is a different conversation, but really related. So kind of not a different conversation, but not what we're going to get into right this moment. back to what I was saying, to make sure you don't form a samskara, you have to be aware of what your emotions are doing, and you have to be open and allow them to go through you. At the same time, not at the same time, but in resonance with that is the fact that sometimes a stimulus will come in and will hit one of our emotional blockages, and the emotional blockage brings that emotion up. So it's not really being created in the moment, it's already been created. But you have to be aware of it in the moment when it's hit and when you feel it, so that you can let it go, which is going to be the subject of next month, and I'm very excited about it. I'm going to keep talking about that, but because that's a big deal. Letting go is a huge thing. Really, really is. So, needing to be in the moment in order not to create samskaras, in order to let the emotions go. I'll be honest with you. So I've been speaking to you guys a little bit about this, well, a little bit, like this, all that I'm doing right now is I'm really focusing on emotional and, well, personal development, personal growth, spiritual stuff. And, it's really what my entire life is about right now, which I'm very grateful to be able to do. Like, thank you. And that's a different story. Stop, put it over there. Okay. So as I'm kind of working on myself and loosening up these blockages that have been here forever, and I've done so much of this work, so much for so many years now, just the physical act of physically letting go of this stuff that I can actually feel and see the energy. I've finally gotten to this place where I'm like, oh, it's almost gone. But I've been there so many times where I'm like, oh, and then there's always a next level, but soon, soon. It's awesome. Things are going to flow much better when this stuff clears out a bit more. But the thing is, these emotions, this energy is all emotional energy that I stored by clenching onto it because I didn't want to feel it. And just holding it there for a very long time. And the ones that are left are kind of the ones that are like the most impactful, right? The most like, that's been there for a long time, or like, that really hurt, or both. So these things are kind of coming loose and floating, and they have a resonance. They are an emotion, right? They are an emotion. The energy that I am releasing from my muscle is an emotion. So it comes through and I feel it. And there's so many times the past couple of months, because I'm doing this work, where I feel so shitty because it's like, this shit isn't working. Nothing ever. But you know what? Actually, when I'm feeling the shitty emotion, that is actually proof that it's working because the emotion's coming up and I am having an opportunity in the moment to deal with it, which is priceless and something to be grateful for. And the thing about that, though, is remembering it in the moment when the emotion is happening. Because when the emotion is happening, I'm like, motherfucker! Like, this isn't working. I can't believe this. It's never going to end. And my life is going to be like all catastrophizing and all these emotions. And at the same time, I'm like, but I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be wrapped up in these emotions. And then it's like, oh, and so now I'm judging myself. And it's hard. It's hard, guys. Even when you're like focusing your entire life on it, it's still hard. It's like, oh, and I say that and it's a negative affirmation, right? I mean, there are plenty of people I know who would be like, well, the more you say that, the more it's going to be true. It's going to be, if you say it's hard, it's going to be hard. If you say it's easy, it's going to be easy. No, if I say it's easy, it doesn't make it easy. It's like the whole, you can just let it go thing. I mean, yes, there are things you can just let go, but there are also things that it's going to take a little bit of time because the pathways are there and the way your brain is formed has been formed the way it's been formed, and you have to retrain it, you have to rewire it, and that takes a little bit of time, guys. But this is an exercise, basically a practice that needs to be repeated every single time. Every single time. And it's tiring. It is. And but it's worth it. It's worth it. because I cannot tell you. One of the things I was listening to today was about, we look and compare ourselves the way we kind of look at ourselves a lot of the time. I can't remember which. I'm taking so many of these courses now, but one of the things was like, a lot of times we will compare ourselves now with where we want to be and feel less than, but we hardly ever compare ourselves now with where we were and see how far we came. When you work on this stuff, there will be plateaus where it feels like nothing's happening, and then there'll be like, pew, and you're like, oh my God, look at that. Instead, all of a sudden you realize you're like, oh, this used to bother me a lot, but now I'm cool with it. Maybe I'm not cool with it, but it's not really bothering me the way it was. Or whatever, there's a million different ways. Relax. Just relax. Take a breath. There we go. Okay. So, in order to be the healthiest you can be, another like mindfulness is the thing, right, guys? Being in the moment. You have to be in the moment in order to both not form new problems and to get rid of old problems, because you recognize when they come up. And sitting through them and being the objective observer is very difficult when you're feeling these storms come through you. And I'm sure that when I get it right enough times, it'll be easier. But it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Earlier, I really did. I was spreading a bit of the crap around. I could feel the energy, the crappy energy kind of, Pepe Le Pew? It's like that. It's like, oh, the stench of negative vibrations are just kind of wafting. It is like wafting off of me. But okay. What else? Staying present. What else? So the thing about that is, let's talk a little bit more about remaining open during discomfort, because that's tough. And that's really about what I've kind of come to do when it's when I realize an emotion that's coming up is uncomfortable and I don't want to hold on to it. Like you say, oh, how do I stay open? That's hard. If you're not used to staying open, you're like, what do you mean by that? And it really does often come back to relax and release, right? Like, okay, I feel this emotion, and when I am present enough, like I wasn't this present earlier today, but when I'm present enough and I'm like, okay, that's an emotion, and I can feel it tensing this area of my body up. Okay, well, I'm going to breathe into that area and relax it, and do that. And then, once I've done that enough and kind of just watch it, I'll just kind of distract myself, not suppress it, allow it to be there, but focus on something else, right? Which can be difficult if it's especially like, if it's an emotion that's screaming at you, which a lot of them do. So the other thing that I think is important to acknowledge in the moment is that emotions are temporary, right? And you can only really experience that when you're in the moment, because they come and then they go. Whereas if you're not in the moment, I don't know, this has happened to me, and this is my theory about it. I don't know if this is true, but my experience has been, if I'm not present and I have an emotion and I don't want to have it, so I cling to it, I hold on to it, or I try and push it away, whatever the case may be. I'm not present for it. It stays. Like it doesn't just go because I'm holding on to it, right? So, but if you're in the moment, you can let go of it. Oh, weird vein happening there. Okay, totally fine though, right? Yeah. So let's kind of talk about how we can, a few more ways of how we can stay in the moment, witness the heart, and and be cool with it. So when the emotion arises, right, like it's a matter of, you have to be in the moment to do this, but it's a matter of becoming aware when the emotion starts, or you can start feeling it getting triggered, or whatever the case may be. But like, oh, that's an emotion. Like, you have to be aware enough. You have to be in the moment enough that you feel that happening. And that's why we stay in the moment, right? That's why we practice being mindful. We practice, it's so funny, mindful and anyway, that's a different semantic. What word is coming out of my mouth right now? Semantic. Thing. Let's cut that one off. Put it over there. Let's get back to what we're talking about. So one thing that we can do once we were present enough to realize the emotion is coming up is to then be like, oh, that's anger. I feel anger, or I feel angry. We don't say I am angry. I say it all the time, but words matter. And I am working on training myself, and I have been for a while. Although it goes in phases. Sometimes I forget. But that's just normal. And if you do that, it's okay. So, but not identifying as the anger, right? Or even as the joy or the whatever. I'm not happy. I feel happiness. I'm not jealous. I feel envy or jealousy. Excuse me. And just speaking that way gives you another way to detach from the emotion, and to see it as something other than yourself, and not to get caught up in it. Words are very important, and what we tell ourselves, we believe. So if you keep on saying, I'm angry, well, that's an identity, but if you say, anger's with me right now, I feel a lot of anger right now, I'm feeling angry, however you want to say it, acknowledging that it's a feeling and not who you are is a very useful thing to do. Again, gotta be in the moment to do that. Then while you're kind of doing that, you can breathe into it, like I was kind of saying, like, okay, relax and release. How do you relax and release is like, I find that breathing into it, being like, okay, well, that I'm feeling that in the back part of my neck on the left lower quadrant, or whatever the case may be. It's like, okay, deep breath, breathe into it, and then I can relax it. Staying open again, and that's just a matter as far as it works for me. Staying open is really about being present and relaxing and releasing no matter what comes up. And then watching it go is a good thing too. This is a relief, So this has been a very long video. And it is about the heart. And I am grateful for my heart, even when I get all pissed off and angry and woe is me, and because that happens a lot. Shouldn't be like this. It's not fair. I do that a lot. And it's not something to, make fun of myself for, but it does. Like, I would like not to do it. It would be nice not to do it. So I'm grateful for the awareness that I have. I'm grateful for the awareness that I am gaining. And I am going to remind you guys, as I tend to do, that even if you're like, I feel so angry, you can always choose to have a grateful night.